Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If she was really honest, why does something still feel off? You can't point to a clear lie, you can't catch a contradiction, but deep down, something doesn't sit right. And the most dangerous thought starts creeping in. Am I just being insecure? Here's the truth most men never hear. What if she's not lying to deceive you, but lying to control how you see her? Most men think women lie to hide the truth. That's wrong. They lie to protect perception, and perception is power. After this video, you're not going to listen to words anymore. You're going to read patterns, because body count is not the issue. The issue is her relationship with truth, accountability, and self-image. A woman who lies comfortably about her past will lie comfortably about her present, as long as the image is protected. So let's talk about the signs, not accusations, not paranoia. Patterns. Sign number 1, the vague story. This is where vagueness replaces truth. Psychologically, this is called a linguistic smokescreen. She gives you just enough information to appear open, but never enough to be verifiable. You might hear things like, just a few, I don't really remember. It wasn't that many. Why does the exact number even matter? Notice what's missing. No numbers, no timelines, no context. And when you gently ask for clarity, something interesting happens. She shifts the conversation, laughs it off, or suddenly makes you feel strange for asking, like you crossed an invisible line. Here's the insight that matters. Specificity is the enemy of a liar. Truth doesn't fear detail. Stories do. A woman who remembers what she did remembers when it happened. A woman who avoids detail is managing perception. And here's the trap men fall into. They reward vagueness. They say, that's fair, or, yeah, the past is the past. What she learns is simple. Ambiguity keeps her comfortable. Clarity is optional. Now, sign number 2, aggressive deflection. This one catches men off guard. You ask a calm, reasonable question, and suddenly the emotional temperature spikes. Why would you even ask that? That's such an insecure thing to care about. I thought you were different. This is not a discussion anymore. It's a counterattack. Psychologically, this is known as darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She denies the need to answer, attacks your character, then positions herself as the one being wronged. Now you're no longer talking about her past. You're defending your intent. And that's the point. When truth threatens image, emotion becomes a weapon. Pay attention to proportionality. A small question should not create a big explosion. When it does, it's not about your question. It's about what the question touches. Men who miss this sign do something fatal. They back down. They apologize for asking. They try to reassure her. They sacrifice their boundaries to restore peace. And in doing so, they teach her that pressure works, that discomfort can be redirected, that accountability is optional. Sign number 3 is more subtle and more dangerous. The past doesn't matter. On the surface, it sounds mature, enlightened, even wise. That was the past. It doesn't define me. Why are you judging who I used to be? Psychologically, this is moral reframing mixed with cognitive dissonance. Instead of answering a data question, she reframes it as a moral issue. Now you're not seeking information. You're a judgmental man who can't let go. Here's the twist most men miss. The past isn't baggage. It's data. Patterns don't disappear because time passed. They disappear because behavior changed. And change has evidence. When someone avoids data by hiding behind philosophy, they are protecting identity, not truth. This is where men confuse understanding with tolerance. Understanding female psychology does not mean ignoring red flags. It means seeing clearly without emotion. Let me slow this down for you. A woman who is at peace with her past can speak about it without defensiveness. Without scripts, without moral lectures. A woman who reframes data as judgment is not protecting growth. She's protecting comfort. And here's the deeper insight. Someone who avoids responsibility for who they were will avoid responsibility for what they do next. Now pause here. Ask yourself something honestly. When you've asked questions in the past, did you receive clarity or did you receive emotion? Because emotion is often used to replace information. In part 2, we're going deeper. We're going to talk about renamed patterns, inconsistent stories, and the subtle ways responsibility gets erased. This is where most men stop guessing and start seeing. Now let's continue. Because this is where the mask doesn't fall off all at once. It cracks. And most men miss the crack because they're too focused on being understanding. Sign number 4, the college phase. This one sounds harmless, almost charming. I had a wild phase in college. That was just a phase. I was experimenting. Psychologically, this is minimization through rebranding. Multiple years of repeated behavior get compressed into a single label. A pattern becomes a moment. A habit becomes a phase. Notice what's missing. No duration, no frequency, no accountability, just a name that softens impact. Here's the insight you need to hear clearly. People don't change by renaming patterns. They change by understanding why the pattern existed and choosing differently. When someone labels repeated choices as a phase, they are avoiding the why. And when the why is avoided, the pattern is still alive. Men often accept this explanation because it sounds reasonable. But reasonable is not the same as truthful. Truth has structure. Truth has context. A label is not context. Sign number 5. Inconsistent stories. This is where things quietly unravel. Not because she's stupid, but because maintaining a constructed narrative requires constant mental energy. Psychologically, this is cognitive overload. You hear the same story told twice, but the details don't line up. The timeline shifts, the number changes. The circumstances soften or harden depending on the mood. Not dramatically, just enough to create static. Here's the mistake men make. They confront. They try to catch her. That never works. The correct move is observation. You listen, you remember, you compare. Liars don't fail under pressure. They fail under relaxation. When someone is lying, they forget which version they told, and those microslips tell you more than any confession ever could. Sign number 6. I was young. I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. This is responsibility avoidance dressed as innocence. Psychologically, this is the victim narrative combined with externalized responsibility. Notice the language shift. I chose becomes it happened. I wanted becomes I was influenced. Agency disappears. The environment becomes the culprit. Age. Alcohol. Circumstances. Here's the red flag beneath the excuse. A moral compass that depends on conditions is not a compass. It's a weather vane. And people who blame context for their choices will blame context again when it suits them. Men often accept this explanation because it sounds empathetic. But empathy without discernment is self-betrayal. Understanding is not agreement. Sign number 7 is where words stop mattering. Because the body speaks. Unnatural physical comfort. This one is subtle, and it makes men uncomfortable to talk about. She is physically fluent, precise, efficient, but something is missing. Connection. The intimacy feels rehearsed, transactional, routine. Her body is present, but her emotions aren't. Psychologically, this relates to somatic memory and emotional desensitization. The body remembers what the mind edits. Repetition without emotional bonding creates skill without depth. And men misread this. They think proficiency equals passion. It doesn't. Sometimes it means the opposite. This is not about judging experience. It's about noticing disconnect. Because when physical closeness lacks emotional presence, it often reflects how intimacy was experienced in the past. And finally, sign number 8, her friends. This is the ecosystem test. You don't date a woman in isolation. You date her environment. Psychologically, this is social proof mixed with mirror theory. Look at the women she surrounds herself with. Drama, chaos, validation addiction, constant relationship instability. And yet, she claims she's different. Maybe she is. But proximity is influence. People don't stay in ecosystems that contradict their values. They stay where behavior is normalized. Watch how she speaks about her friends. Does she defend their actions? Rationalize their choices? Minimize their patterns? That's future insight. Because what she excuses in others, she allows in herself. Now, let's connect the dots. None of these signs alone prove anything, but patterns do. Vagueness, deflection, rebranding, inconsistency, avoided responsibility, disembodied intimacy, chaotic ecosystems. Together, they form a picture. And here comes the big reveal in the next part. The number never destroys relationships. The lie does. In part 3, I'm going to show you why honesty matters more than history and how to stop rewarding performance and start rewarding truth. Now, here's the truth that reframes everything. The number never destroys relationships. The lie does. Men argue endlessly about body count because they think the number is the threat. It's not. The real threat is what the number reveals about a woman's relationship with truth, accountability, and self-image. A woman who can speak honestly about uncomfortable facts is predictable. A woman who manages perception instead of truth is not. And unpredictability is what destroys trust. Here's the psychological twist most men miss. When someone lies to protect an image, they don't stop lying once the danger passes. They lie again to preserve comfort. They lie again to avoid tension. They lie again to maintain control. Because the habit isn't deception. The habit is self-preservation through distortion. This is why focusing on the number is the wrong frame. You're not evaluating her past. You're evaluating how she handles reality. Does she meet truth directly? Or does she reroute it through emotion, philosophy, and performance? Now let's close the loop. Look back at the patterns. Vague language instead of clarity, emotional defense instead of answers, moral lectures instead of data, renamed patterns instead of ownership, inconsistent stories instead of structure, excuses instead of responsibility, physical fluency without emotional presence, and an ecosystem that normalizes chaos. None of these are about sex. They're about honesty. And here's the part that empowers you as a man. Understanding women does not mean hating women. It means refusing to be led by charm instead of character. It means not confusing emotional intensity with authenticity. It means recognizing that transparency is not aggression. A man who values clarity is not insecure. He's discerning. Now let's talk about what most men get wrong at the end. They reward performance. They reward tears. They reward defensiveness. They reward emotional displays. They mistake emotional reaction for sincerity. But emotion is not truth. Consistency is. The correct move is simple but difficult. You don't argue. You don't interrogate. You don't try to extract confessions. You observe. You notice whether honesty is offered freely or only under pressure. You notice whether clarity feels natural or painful. And then you decide, not emotionally, not impulsively, but from self-respect. Here's the final frame. You are not entitled to her past, but you are responsible for your future. And choosing a partner who has a clean relationship with truth is not judgment, it's leadership. Because relationships don't collapse from facts, they collapse from distortions. Let me leave you with this. If someone tells the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, they can be trusted when it matters. If someone protects image over honesty, they will protect comfort over commitment, and no amount of charm can compensate for that. If this video gave you clarity instead of reassurance, you're exactly where you need to be. Comment below, I value clarity over comfort. Share this with a man who is still mistaking charm for honesty. And subscribe if you're done guessing and ready to see.